Can't breathe, sir. Can't breathe. Breathe, sir. I can't breathe. Can't breathe, sir. Can't breathe. Still can't breathe. Still can't breathe, sir. Those were the last known words of Manuel Ellis, a 33-year-old man from Tacoma who died on March 3rd, 2020. He said those words over the course of 2 minutes while in police custody. And before he said those words, he had been tackled to the ground. He had been punched in the head over and over and over again. He had been choked into unconsciousness, and he was tased 3 times with 2 taser probes still stuck in his chest. And as he said those words, he was on the ground, on his stomach, pressed to the ground by an officer on his back. Despite, during all of that, the only thing he said was, "I can't breathe, sir." Throughout all that Mr. Ellis had endured, throughout all what the officers were doing to him, he never fought back, never struck back at the officers. And they would tell you that it was the officers that were was attacking Mr. Ellis. And despite all that Mr. Ellis had to endure, he said one thing: "Can't breathe, sir. Sir, I can't breathe." Police officers are trained that they can only use force if it is necessary to achieve a lawful purpose. Even if officers have a basis to arrest someone, if that person is not fighting, they can't just start a fight. And even if a subject is resisting, officers can only use the amount of force reasonable to overcome that resistance. They don't get to just inflict pain because they're fearful, or because they want to, or because they're angry. If someone needs to be placed under arrest, their job is to just arrest him. At this point, there are a number of officers at the scene. The situation is under control. Mr. Ellis is prone on his stomach, hog-tied, with the defendant Rankin on his back. And in that transmission, you'll hear the officer saying, "Slow incoming," meaning all incoming units, you can slow down now. We have everything under control. That's the broadcast. And in that broadcast, in the background, Mr. Ellis, in a desperate voice, you can hear, says, "Still can't breathe, sir." And you'll hear that audio. Yet a spit hood was put over his head. And the people that knew he was having difficulty breathing, Officer Collins, Bourbon, and Rankin, heard him say, "Can't breathe," yet they did nothing as that spit hood was placed over Mr. Ellis's head. And Mr. Ellis was bleeding at that time, and you'll hear a description by one of the officers at the scene. In fact, the officer that put the spit hood on him. All 3 of these officers, all 3 of these defendants knew that Mr. Ellis couldn't breathe, was having difficulty breathing, but they did nothing. They just stood by and allowed this to happen. In fact, after Mr. Ellis died, 8 hours after his death, the medical examiner examined that spit hood. He found that the spit hood was covered with blood and mucus from Mr. Ellis's nose and mouth. And the medical examiner determined that that mask played a significant factor in Mr. Ellis's death.
Lou spent the past hour and 15 minutes talking to you about an event that lasted less than 2 weeks. The Manny Ellis that he talked to you about is not the Manny Ellis that faced Officer Burbank and Officer Collins on March 3rd, 2020 at October 29th. That evening, the Manny Ellis that they encountered was aggressive, he was violent, and he was extremely high in methamphetamine. After taking almost 2 minutes to try to arrest him, detain him, he was still bucking and fighting even after they had him. During that period of time, Officers Rankin and his partner, Officer Ford, happened upon the scene with a tremendous number of other officers, and Mr. Ellis is still bucking these individuals, still fighting against these individuals. That is the Manuel Ellis that these individuals encountered. Unfortunately, when Mr. Ellis passed away, that happened. But quite frankly, based upon the testimony of the medical experts, that was more like a foregone conclusion than anything else. Now, remembering back the medical testimony that's been provided from a variety of experts, and there's like a dozen experts or so. There's 6 on the prosecutor's side, there's 6 on the defense side, but they all point back to the initial medical evaluation that was done by Dr. Clark. Now, Dr. Clark, you'll hear him testify, and he'll be up on the stand. Dr. Clark was a former Pierce County medical examiner. You're going to hear about his background and his experience in dealing with cases of this nature in the past. And all of the experts start that basically as their primer for what occurred. And Dr. Clark said that Mr. Ellis had a bad heart, and you're going to hear about that probably ad nauseum, that he might have been, it was progressive hypoxia, but the problem is that what put Mr. Ellis over the top was the use of the spit hook. That is significant because none of these 3 officers in any fashion had anything to do with the spit hook. That's the first thing. They had nothing to do with the spit hook. That was minutes after they had been done. They were no longer involved. And the other part, and significantly, is that due to Mr. Ellis's extremely high, fatal methamphetamine dose, he was going to die. We have historical information regarding Mr. Ellis. We know that there was an event in 2015. 2015, 5 years before this event, he was high on methamphetamine, causing legal difficulties, causing him to be hobbled by officers to restrain him, to stop him from acting in the manner that he was acting. We have the event in 2019 where this is frighteningly similar to what occurred in 2020. He was running down the street, Pacific Avenue, naked. Officers were after him. He's down on the ground, and the officer said, "Stay down, do not get up, stay down." Mr. Ellis gets up, he is naked, and he charges the police officer. Officer shoots him with a taser, he drops to the ground. He recovers, he gets back up, and he's charging the officers again, and they tase him. And at that point in time, the second tasing, they were able to apprehend him. They were able to arrest him, and then he was charged with offense. To Mr. Ellis's credit, he recognized the only reason the officers didn't shoot me because they could tell I was in a meth psychosis, and that's why I'm still alive. That's why I'm still alive. And then we have the event where he is high again in 2019 in December, and then unfortunately on this period of time in 2020.
You, the jury, are the sole judges of the credibility of witnesses in this case, and you, the jury, are the final arbiters of the facts of this case. Only you, nobody else, not the media, not the public, not these prosecutors, just you. The charge is recklessness. It's alleged that Officer Timothy Rankin acted with extreme recklessness, disregard of the risk, substantial risk, that his actions alone would kill Manuel Ellis. That's what he's charged with. There's no evidence of that. The most dangerous kind of prosecutors are the ones that put on partial facts, non-facts.
Your Honor, objection on sustained.
This is a case that shouldn't have been brought. You'll hear that. You're going to hear all the evidence in the testimony. And when you hear all of it, and we talked about this in jury selection too, they have the burden of proving beyond a reasonable doubt the highest standard in our country, that Officer Rankin recklessly caused the death of Manuel Ellis, that he disregarded a substantial risk that would be killed. He didn't do anything disregarding the risk. He simply tried to control Mr. Ellis. That's all he did. He did nothing more. And it's up to you to decide whether or not to take into account what their claims are that are not supported by the evidence are what the evidence itself shows. Common sense, you don't leave it at the courtroom, they don't have them anymore, the jury rooms. You don't leave it behind, use your common sense as jurors to decide this case. And at the end of the evidence, we submit to you that the evidence will permit you, it'll lead you, and it'll ultimately compel you to find Officer Timothy Rankin not guilty. Thank you.